adding a rock casting to the tunnel portal. We're first going to do the one side and then the opposite side. So for this side I'm just going to mark up to where the tunnel portal comes and remove that for ease of access. And then for the rock casting, to get some grip, I'm going to insert some toothpicks that has been cut, just so that the plaster of Paris will have something to grip on once I insert the mold, so that it doesn't just fall about. I think one or two more should be sufficient. And then we need to choose the mold and cover the track. I don't know if that is very visible. Let's just see from a different angle. Now you can see them sticking out, and then we shall now go and prepare the mold. I have several different rock molds to choose from, different depths, different designs. This one is actually quite deep, so that might not be a good choice. This one might also be a reasonably good choice, as is this one, which is also not too deep. Or this one, I'll have to go and size them to see what sizes, and this is quite a small one that might just work well there as well, and I need quite a straight edge for right up against the tunnel portal. So let's go see if we can try them individually. For trying the rock molds, I'm just putting the tunnel portal back in its place temporarily. Now let's see the different molds, how they will fit. This one will need to get down quite a bit. Not a good fit. Next one, if we can see that, seems like a very good fit. So we'll keep this one aside. Let's have a look at this one. If I can find a straightish edge, I think that is more or less possibility, but I think that other one was a better fit. This one, there's a nice straight. That's also a very good fit. You don't have to fill it up all the way. And then the last one, which is quite big, if we can fill that one in there. I think that one is going to be too big, but there are two possibilities, so let's just have a look between these two. And that one, we fill that about 3/4 of the way, it will fill very nicely. The other one, have a look at this one, that way around, can also do nicely, or even that way around. That might even work better. Well, let's see, I think this one was the better option, because it comes right up to the edge of the backdrop. And yeah, so let's try this one. We can always trim the top off a little bit. So now let's prepare the track and let's mix some plaster. To prepare the track, we're simply going to stick some, and let's remove the tunnel portal, some masking tape over the track to prevent any of the plaster spatters to fall onto the track and create some hassles later on. Next step will be to do the rock casting on the side that is now closest to the camera, but I'll have to glue this piece in place here, and then once this is in place we can have a look for a rock casting that will fit nicely with that one. Now let's go and prepare the rock mold. Preparing the mold, in order to have an easy release from the plaster, I spray it with some wet water, which is tap water with a drop of detergent mixed into it, so it gets a bit soapy. And if my spray bottle will work, that's it, and then I can just pour the balance out. This is in the garage, so the floor can get wet, no serious hassles. And then we need to mix the plaster. For mixing the plaster, there are a few tips. I'm using empty pill bottles as measuring cups. So I'm going to use, or start out with a 50-50 mix, and then add plaster as I need to. And for mixing the plaster, I'm using an expired bank card. And this is another trick I've learned through the ages, and that is to actually run the plaster of Paris through a sieve to get a much better texture and consistency. Pardon my dog growling in the background, she's probably seen a cat. Okay, let's add the rest. Yeah, just be careful, I poured a bit too much plaster now, so it's falling to the sides of the little tub I'm using to mix it in. And I prefer to use disposable tubs. These are which I buy chicken livers in. My dog lives on a chicken liver and rice diet, so I have one of these tubs every day that goes empty and can be used for all sorts of handy things in the layout room, container for small parts, or mixing dish for plaster of Paris, or even when it comes to paint, I can, when I have to do large areas, use the little tub to mix paint in, and it's nice and big to thin it down, especially when it comes to weathering track and that type of thing. Okay, that's the last bit of the plaster. Okay, all mixed in. Now the mixing process. As you can see at the moment, it is very soupy. Just want to see if I can pick up some of this plaster that fell to the side. It is very soupy. I do not want it that soupy, so I think I will add another half a container of plaster to this water mix. is starting to become a bit more like a batter, pancake batter consistency, but still too liquid. Continue sifting in some plaster. Continue mixing. This is still much too soupy, but you also don't want it too stiff, because then it will all of a sudden solidify before you have had a chance to position it on the layout. And it must be quite stiff in the mold, so that when you remove the mold it won't fall apart or run all over the show. Okay, let's add a bit more. And the last few lumps I just force through the sieve with my finger, and then let's see if we stir this through again. Becoming a bit thicker, but still a very liquid consistency. If I pick it up, you can see it still runs off quite easily. So it seems our starting ratio should be a 2:1, with 2 plaster and 1 water, but you start with the water and then you add the plaster. Becoming more like a paste. I think that is what we want. And then, unfortunately, this little table is not very level. So I had to turn the mold a little bit okay, let's see if we add some more. Okay, the method I'm using is one of a couple of methods, and that is to apply the wet plaster to the layout. You can also let it dry, remove it from the mold, and glue the plaster rock casting in place with either hot glue or even a white glue will do. But for this application I've decided to use, you saw me putting those little pins in on the polystyrene. Then I can now just, when this is a little bit more sturdy, press it onto that and it will dry in place. Then I can remove the mold. To prepare the area where it's going, I need to wet that ever so slightly, also with the wet water. So I'm going back to the track and going to wet the rock face where it's supposed to go. Now that area is where the plaster will go, so I've just wet that area, and then as soon as the mold is dry enough I will come and position it. Okay, this feels dry enough right now, so let's see if we can press it in and just leave it right there. I might have to fill in behind it a little bit. The original piece in place and another piece that has been broken off from the top of the mold that will fit in there. These pieces need to be glued together and placed in there permanently, and then those little areas there need to be filled in with a very soupy mixture of plaster, and then we can release the tape from the track, but that is where we have gone to for now. Preparing the tunnel portal for the plaster infill, and all we're going to do is to paste a piece of masking tape over the side so that the plaster does not stick to the tunnel portal, and then we can remove the portal once the plaster is dry, and the masking tape can be removed from the tunnel portal and it will fit in very easily. Preparing for filling in the plaster, just a little container with pure water, and this one I will mix the plaster into, a brush, a knife to help spread it, and also a card that I will cut up into smaller pieces if the knife doesn't work to get it into the crevices. This time I'm just adding the plaster straight to the water without sifting, and then I will use the knife to mix the plaster into the water. Seems that I have got a very stiff, as I started with less water, 50% water, or 1 to 2, 1 water and 2 plaster. So immediately I have got a much stiffer consistency, but it's still a bit too watery to go and apply right now. It's just going to run if I apply it, so we need to give it a few minutes to thicken on its own, or we need to add some more plaster. I think I might just add a bit more plaster, just from the plaster that was messed here on my modeling workbench. This plaster is thickening very nicely. We'll move to the tunnel portal very shortly. Okay, now let's start filling in with some of this plaster. And one more thing, I need to wet the existing plaster, otherwise the new mixture will draw moisture from the existing plaster and make it brittle and break very easily. That's also normally done with a spray bottle, but okay, let's see if we can get this plaster to flow in there nicely. There's quite a big chunk at the bottom that needs to be filled in. I hope I'll be able to manage to fill that in. Seems like it is working. And up top here is another big area that needs filling in. Okay, and then to sort of smooth it out, we use the wet brush. see there's some more areas that can be filled in there right at the bottom of this rock face. Sorry, unfortunately my tripod is not high enough so you can see everything. There's another piece that seemed to be a bit loose, so let's fill in next to it and behind it and on top of it. Hopefully that plaster will keep it in place, and then if this plaster dries a bit too unsightly, we can always carve it by hand. And let's get the brush and work this plaster in. See, the rock strata seem to be running upwards. Okay, I think that is done for now. Now we can just leave it to dry, and then once it is dry we can remove the tunnel portal. Let me show you how easy it is to remove the tunnel portal with that piece of tape, and I've also put some plaster over the top of it, but that's still a bit wet, so that will just break away. And there the tunnel portal has been removed. Now I can simply peel off the masking tape, and there's the tunnel portal, and it will go back into position. Now it's simply awaiting some painting, and then we have to do the opposite side.